Awesome. Hello and welcome to day 5 of the Design Pattern Create Summit. I am very sad that it's the last day. It's been a wonderful week of creativity and tons of inspiration. So if you're joining us, please make sure you drop a hello and tell us where you're joining us from, as well as if you're watching the replay, let us know so that we can also say hi. I have so many great speakers here today to answer any of the questions that you all have. And I'm going to go ahead and have them introduce themselves and just give a little talk about themselves. Shelley, do you want to go ahead and start us off?
Thanks, Christina. My name is Shelley Brown, and I had the Style File system, which is the first system that's been designed to give women their fashion information. So rather than wonder if a style is going to be suiting you, this will give you all your correct information so that you know the patterns and styles to choose for you.
Yeah, I love it. Ronnie, you want to go next?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Ronnie Moses. I have been sewing since I was a little girl. I never learned pattern drafting or fashion design, mostly from the library, from books. To be honest, I'm not very good with conventional patterns, and I love working with knit fabrics. They are so forgiving, they're wonderful. I sew tons for myself, for my kids these last few years. And I'm always happy to share my pattern drafting knowledge with anybody who's willing to listen.
Yes, get more pattern drafters out in the world so they can all create their own amazing pieces. Awesome. Lisa, you want to go next?
Sure. I am Lisa. I'm the owner of Pink Hollybush Designs, which is a line of children's sewing patterns, most of which have an option for smocking and most of which are designed for knits.
Yes, I love it. We had a lot of fun talking smocking yesterday for sure. And V, you want to finish us up?
I'm V Tanner. I'm a sewing teacher and a costume maker, and I run online classes doing sewing various things. I also have the Ultimate Upcycling Fashion Bundle, and what else? I make costumes for theatre groups, and for the museum project that I'm working at, we make historical costumes. Well, they're not, yeah, they're costumes rather than clothes. And I teach adults sewing at Reading College, at the Reading Sewing Bee, and at the museum as well, the Children Open Air Museum. And from September, I'll be teaching at 2 colleges in Surrey, in the county that I live.
Awesome. Always exciting stuff. And I'm Christina. I am a digital pattern maker, and I love helping sewing enthusiasts learn how to make their own patterns on the computer, both through Adobe Illustrator and Clo 3D. This has been a really great week for me, and I love talking with all these different people. They inspire me so much and helps my creativity just kind of explode out. I always feel so energized after this week of creativity. I do want to start off. Do any of you have any questions for any of the other speakers? Not off the top of your head. V, I do want to know a little bit more about your costuming when you work with the historical costumes that you have. Like, how do you have to reuse them a lot so you have them so that they can go in and out and have all the extra seam allowance, or is it a little bit more set?
So when we started the project in 22, I was given a brief that we want costumes for Iron Age, for the 1780s, which is the Georgian period, for the Victorian period, which is 1850s, for 1950. So, okay, what sizes do you want me to make? I don't know, was the answer I got back. So it needs to fit a variety of people because they didn't actually have that. So the costumes were for people at the museum. They've got various different houses that have been rescued and rebuilt in their grounds, and they're of historical importance from the local area of Buckinghamshire. So what they wanted to do was to have volunteers in the houses describing their engagement volunteers. So people come in and they want to be dressed in costume of the era of the cottage that they're in, so that they can talk about, what it was like living in that era. So they're not actually like a living history, it's more of an interpretation, so that they can then say, yeah, because in those days we didn't have gas-fired heating, we had these wooden fireplaces where you could catch a light. They had straw platters and stuff like that. So I just picked 3 sizes, small, medium, and large, and we kind of went with that. Then, as the project has gone on and developed, we've had some people come in and they don't fit any of the small, medium, or large because they've got scoliosis or they're much shorter, and so everything was just hanging ridiculous. You couldn't alter them. It was easier to make fresh costumes. So we've been making custom makes now as well. It's also extended to be for World War II. So we had land girls who wore the dungarees and had very distinctive shirts and knitted jumper, this kind of colour actually. So I run a team of volunteers who are really good sewers, seamstresses, and they're volunteers. So we meet twice a month, and some of them do knitting. They're really good at knitting. There's one lady in particular who's a fantastic knitter. So she's done all these, it's a fisherman's rib the jumpers were made out of. She's also done for the 1950s man these Fair Isle not polo shirts, they're sleeveless V-neck jumpers.
Vests?
Yes. They've got this beautiful Fair Isle pattern. So she's done actually 4 of them now. And then we've also done, it's extended to World War I nurses as well. So I've had to do a bit of research into, well, what did they wear? Then where am I going to get a pattern from? What do I base a pattern on? So there are some places that I've managed to find some historical patterns and use those. And it's been really interesting actually making these historical patterns, because the instructions just were really not like modern day patterns. Assume so much knowledge in like the order, like they'll give you some steps, and like step 7, do this before you do step 1. What's that all about? So, like doing like a welt pocket on a jacket, they'll tell you the instructions on step 7, whereas really you should do that as one of the first things that you do before you start assembling it. So yeah, it's been a bit of an adventure and a bit of a learning curve as well. But yeah, it's been really good fun, and we meet twice a month, and in the actual grounds we've got we were in the old vicarage, which was set up as a Victorian schoolhouse. So we would have to spend half an hour setting the room up, getting it up so it's like a schoolroom. And of course you get visitors coming in. So no, they didn't have electricity in the Victorian time and all this sort of nonsense. So but no, we get to interact with the visitors to the museum, and they take a lot of interest in what we're doing as well. And now the museum have created a new space for us. It's called the Elliott Workroom, which used to be it's a rescued furniture factory in High Wycombe. High Wycombe was known for its furniture making because of all the trees that were growing there. And they've rebuilt it. It was going to be knocked down, so it's been reconstructed. They literally take it down brick by brick and then move it to the museum and rebuild it brick by brick. So we've got it's called, but they've named it the Elliott Workspace because it was founded by the Elliott family or the Elliott brothers or something like that. So we have a nice new space. We have proper heating and proper lighting, which we didn't have in the Victorian schoolroom, which was a little bit dark. And because of it being a historic building, they weren't allowed to put like proper lighting in or anything like that. And plus as well, the electrics were a little bit dodgy sometimes. There was once I blew the whole electrics off of that building, and we had no power to run the sewing machines because I plugged a heater in and it just went poof. So in our new space, we have nice heating so that we don't get cold. Because also it was that heated by one of these coal fires, or it could be like a wood burner. It has a special name. It's like a stove. And that was our heat, which was quite fun to light. There was a technique to lighting that, which I learned.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I always love going to those types of museums and seeing like, because they're all set up so differently. So I really enjoy seeing all that. But awesome. And I know, so yesterday I asked all of the speakers, so Lisa's already answered this question, but what is one of those questions that you always get from like your clients or your people that just always want to know something more about you? Like, what is the question? And then what is the answer you always give? So does somebody want to go first, or should I just randomly pick?
I'll go first. A lot of people ask me, there was a time where I sewed my own wedding dress, and I sewed for about 6 or 7 of my friends their wedding dresses. And people would say to me, "You don't want to sew wedding dresses for a living?" And now when I sew children's clothes, they're like, "You don't want to sew clothes for a living? You don't want to have your own clothing line?" And no, absolutely not. I don't want to deal with bridezillas. I don't want to deal with anyone who feels, "Oh, I'm paying an outrageous sum for this dress. I deserve, to have everything my way." I don't want to have to deal with thinking of how I can produce things quickly. And I sew for the fun of it. I sew when I have time. I sew for people that I love. Before I had my own kids, I would sew for all my friends' kids. Lately, they don't get so many clothes from me, but it's something that you do with love, or you don't do at all.
That's fair. That's that's very fair. Shelley?
Well, I don't know so much of how I got started. That's another story. But one of the things that's most fascinating for me is we recently have gone online the past couple of years, but up until then I did in person. And when people would come in, you could sense their nervousness. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be told this is wrong with me, that's wrong with me. And we sit down, take a bit of contact information. We talk about their clothing lifestyles, and then we get into what we call the proportion profile. And we go through right down from neckline to leg length, hems, and different proportions. And you can see people relax because it's all about the positive. There is nothing wrong. We want to bring out all the right things. And so, for example, we'll start, "Oh, do you have a longer or shorter neck?" And someone will say, "Oh, I never thought about that before." Well, they haven't thought about that before because they don't need to. Their neck is average. Someone who has a shorter or a longer neck needs to address that particular part of their body. And so they discover all their positives, and they discover tangible ways of how to dress their proportions. So if you go online, like for me, I have a longer neck. So if I go online and I want to see, okay, how do I dress a longer neck? That's only part of the equation. And if you watch the video, it's what we call part of our NSB, our length of neck, our breadth of shoulders, and size of bust. And you need those 3 elements to know how to choose your necklines. So for example, I have a longer neck, I'm broad in the shoulders, medium busted. I'm going to wear different styles than someone who is perhaps sloped in the shoulder and very full busted. So this is actually designed for the individual to give them their fashion information. And it just fills my heart when they walk out of the door floating, because they have tangible tools. And it's like, I'll say, okay, so in your closet, you probably have mostly necklines and don't like t-shirts. Yeah, how did you know that? Well, it's not a guess. It's because their NSB tells me of the necklines that they're going to choose. And we go through all, whether someone's long or short-waisted, long in the rise, how to dress petite figures, and of course our silhouette, so that we don't use those nasty terms of pears and apples, which only really creates confusion, and it's very disparaging. So so the system works, makes me really happy.
Shelley,
Yes,
may I ask a question?
absolutely.
Do you also take color theory into account?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. I've been doing color for 40 years. And when I started out, even back then, Seasons was just coming onto the world stage. And it was fascinating because prior to that, we had no inclination that color would work or not. And so here for me, this was so exciting because now we had a tool. Now I could use something that would show me what to do. But I couldn't get past, you can't put the whole world's population in a predestined category. It does not work. We take into consideration your skin tone characteristics. Are you warm, cool, light, deep, bright, muted, your eyes, your current hair color, and your personality.
Mm.
And so while they're going all back to the seasons, it's nice to see it out, but unfortunately, it's not accurate. You might wear a few colors in that seasonal palette, but you won't wear all of them. So then you're back to confusion. So we do a palette that's personal for you. And I spend 40 hours every February and every August preparing for the colors that are coming in for the next fashion season. So we analyze you with colors that you're going to find in the marketplace, not old colors. So for example, I had a client come and she actually showed me, she brought her old palette. And number one, the colors that are in the marketplace didn't represent her palette. So she didn't know that she could wear some of these great colors. And the other thing is, you do change over the years. We were told once we were a season, you are that forever. I'm sorry, I don't look the same at this age as I did when I was 30 and 40. Our skin lightens, our hair color is changed. So it's all about the now, not what used to work, but what is right for you at this point in time. I love color. Color makes me, I love it. It's what it does for a person's appearance is huge. It is a game changer.
I discovered it a few months ago. I have one style of dress that I love, and I had one that I made that just wasn't looking good on me. And it was like a pale yellow with
That would be
flowers on
why.
it. And it's just, and then I made a dress out of like a more mustardy, jewel toned orange, but it looks really good on me.
Because of the
And
brightness.
yeah.
Yeah.
And just now I buy fabrics and I look at it and it's like, wow, I really love this fabric, but I know it's not going to look good on me.
So when you have the colors that you know work, I mean, that's huge. When you're putting all that time into creating something and it's the wrong color, that's sad. So
Yeah.
it's really wise too. And what we do is I've always tried to make services affordable because my passion is for what I call the typical person, not someone who's affluent and can buy anything they want. Everybody needs to buy clothes. We just need to learn the clothes that suit us. And that does include color.
And with the Zoom and us being on video so often, it makes such a huge difference. You know, you're looking at yourself, right? And you can see, wow, on this video, I was wearing that and I looked great. And then that video, I was wearing that and I looked like death warmed over.
Yeah, so it takes all the guesswork out. And I have to say, everybody is wearing their colors today. You all look lovely. Mhm.
I learned about colours quite a few years ago, and it was at a stage where I was getting a bit fed up because everything I had in my wardrobe was just black, and I was getting really bored. So before I had my colours down, I went out and bought brown and orange, which aren't in my palette, and then I had my colours done, and I thought, well, I don't want to chuck them. I'll keep them because I can use them for. I used to do murder mysteries, and it was on we do like a play. It's with the theatre group, and the audience have to guess who done it. And one performance is exactly the same performance. It's like a play that's interactive. One performance, I wore my brown and oranges. Nobody guessed that I was the murderer. Nobody suggested that I would be the murderer. And then another performance, exact same play, I wore my colours, and I got lots of people point the finger at me that I must be the murderer, because I think it's because in the brown and orange, I look wishy-washy, and there's no way that I could possibly be the murderer. It's in my colours that I looked assertive, and maybe that's why
Yeah,
they thought.
it's not a guesswork. There is a science behind it all. And I would encourage, when people do have their colors done, that the person doing them has some type of accreditation. I recently Zoomed with someone in New Jersey, and we did her style file and her colors, and she was over the moon with her colors. She was a very typical cool tone. She was beautiful and blonde, and she was so excited with her colors. And she said, I had been analyzed as an autumn. And she would go shopping and try and force herself to buy these autumn colors, which were not pleasing on her as well. So, you know, you need to know that somebody knows what they're doing.
Mm.
Awesome. Yeah, I did have a question. It didn't come up on the Facebook group or anything, but I was talking to somebody about smocking yesterday, Lisa, and they asked me, how do you take care of smocking? Do you have any like tips for people who are looking
So
to?
if it's a garment, you just normally wash it. Now, not in the washing machine with your jeans, right? But you care for it sort of, I would treat it a little bit more delicately and wash it with the delicates, that sort of thing. But it just depends on what the fabric, what it's made out of. And I would follow that. But it is made to, because it's always been done on garments, it has been made to handle that, and the stitches hold it together. So other than just treating it like you would treat, a nicely, a nice dress, it's fine. I mean, with my knits, my whole, the reason I got into doing the smocking on the knits was to have them more appropriate for today's lifestyle. I have my first granddaughter now. My daughter is not going to iron the clothes before she puts them on. So, I do everything with the knits because that's what my daughter will put her in. But those go right in the washing machine and they go in the dryer. So there's no treating them gently at all. And that's kind of what I've designed them for.
Yeah, that's really great to hear, because my first thought was like, oh, maybe you actually have to like hand wash it and hang dry everything. And so that's really great, because that's yeah, that would be a lot of work.
That's
Nope.
interesting, because for the museum project, we're doing some farmers smocks, and they
Right.
were smocked, and this is like the early 1800s,
Right.
and 1700s they had it as well. I've been researching.
Mm-hmm.
They've had it a lot longer than that, but it was in the mid 1800s it went out of fashion. But I mean, farmers were wearing it, or shepherds were wearing it, and they would get once it got dirty on the front, they would swivel it around and have it so that the dirty bit was at the back and the clean bit was at the front, so they get a bit more wear out of it. And so they must have been hard wearing even then for it to be like workwear.
Yeah,
That
they were workwear, and it was made out of a pretty tough linen fabric that for the most part that would handle yeah.
Lisa?
Yes, go sorry.
No, finish.
Oh, I was just going to say the smocking was made to gather and fit. That was the because it's naturally elastic, and that was some of the reason behind it. So it wasn't, and then of course, you know, being women, we make it decorative because that's what we do, but it was very functional.
Lisa, with smocking with knits, you've got first the properties of the knit and then the smocking, which gives you additional. Do you find that it gives children a longer timeline to wear the outfit because it could kind of grow with them, or
I don't think the knit versus the woven gives like right. I think you still because they tend to outgrow it in the length.
okay.
So that's really yeah. I guess with the smocking, because smocking is you know, you're gathering and putting it together, you've got quite a they're going to be roomier garments, right? So it's not you're not going to outgrow it because it's real fitted. But
Okay.
but
So
typically
dress, tunic, shirt,
crop top.
3 years.
yes. Yep.
Does it make you want to start smocking, Ronnie?
I'm actually interested to give it a try.
Give it a try.
When my kids were smaller, I would make everything like with grow to me size. Like I would have, you know, the bands around the feet and the waistbands were always folded, and then next season unfolded, and kind of giving them a little bit more time to wear the clothes before I have to pass them on to my nieces and nephews. So
Well,
yeah,
you like, you know, the dress, it's the dress, and then it becomes the tunic with the leggings under it, right? And
yeah,
because they don't really, it's the length that they grow out of.
yeah.
So yeah, that's how
So my daughters had dresses that, you know, they were started as dresses. The second year they were tunics, and then the
right,
third year it was a shirt.
right.
Awesome. Any other questions? Okay. Ronnie, I do have one for you. How
Sure.
do you have any tips for people that specifically want to make sure that they're like not overstretching their garments when they're sewing them?
Sure. Well, when working with knits, it's really important because they do have stretch, not to stretch them when sewing. I cannot stress, I think that the one presser foot that's worth its weight in gold is easily the walking foot. I know that people like it not only for knits, also for wovens. If your machine could have a walking foot, can take a walking foot, definitely get one. You will not regret it. Never pull fabric from behind the presser foot. Your fingers should always be in front, lightly, just to direct the fabric to go under the presser foot. And even if you're sewing in a straight line, you don't need to be putting too much pressure on the fabric. It's going to go straight anyway. If you do not have a walking foot, then you could put pins perpendicular to the edge of the fabric. That's at a 90-degree angle with a point towards the raw edge, and just sew over the pins, really. I know many people will be appalled at, you know, sewing over pins. I have no bones about it. Nothing bad has ever happened. I haven't been sent to jail for that.
You've bent a pin though, I bet.
What?
You've bent a pin, I bet, though, I bet.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Um, bending pins, breaking needles, but you should be replacing your needle every 6, 8 hours, whatever. If your needle breaks, it's probably a sign that you had to replace it anyway. If your pin bends, toss it. They're, a dime a dozen. And it'll really help, especially keeping the fabric, all the layers together if you don't have a walking foot. So those are my tips.
Yeah, those walking feet, I love them. I don't own one personally, but all the places I've worked have always had them, and I want my own machine that's a walking foot machine only. So
A walking foot, what it does is, for people who don't know, it actually has an extra set of feed dogs on top. And what it does is it directs all the layers of fabric at the same speed. So because a regular foot puts pressure on the fabric and the feed dogs come from the bottom, then the bottom layer goes faster than the top layers. And then sometimes you'll find that even though they were perfectly lined up, you have a half centimeter or a centimeter off. So with a walking foot, you also have a set of feed dogs on top, and that helps move all the layers at the same speed.
yep, I love them. Does anyone else have a tip that they want to throw out there for anybody who's like starting a beginner, much like Ronnie's walking foot? It's the best tool to get going.
So converse to that, the fact that the dog teeth pull the fabric faster than the top fabric, you can use that to its advantage when you're trying to ease in a sleeve, for example, when you've got one different curve going into a straight edge or a convex curve, you put the baggier fabric along the bottom so that the dog, and use the dog teeth to pull it in and ease it in to the top layer. Don't know if anyone's tried that.
Yep, I agree with that one.
Then you can get away with using a lot less pins. When you're trying to fit in a sleeve head, you can get away with using far fewer pins doing it that way. It's scary, but it works.
As long as you're lining up your notches, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Lisa or Shelley?
I just like to really encourage people that to know your body proportions, to know your colors, to know your silhouette before you embark on a project. Again, in the video, I have the example of when I was expecting, and I made this orange Fortrell maternity outfit. And Fortrell was new, so that was back in the 70s. And I remember being all excited. It was finished and I was going to put it on, and it was like, oh my gosh. We didn't know anything about color then, and it was a wrong color and the style was not good. And when you're putting all that effort and material, I mean, your equipment and material, they're expensive. So you want to know those details before you start.
Yes. Lisa?
I would just say to be willing to take chances, but with your sewing, not to be afraid of it, to recognize that yes, we all make mistakes, but try to just go outside of your comfort zone a little bit. I've had people join me in my classes where they try all the new things at the same time, and that does not work well. So I try to encourage people, if you want to try smocking, for example, do it with a fabric you're comfortable working with. So you're not dealing with two different things at the same time. If you want to try knits, go with an easy knit if you've never done any kind of knits. But take a chance with your sewing and have some fun with it. Be adventurous. It's a great thing, do some pattern drafting, but do it with a fabric that you're comfortable with and a style that is going to work for you. Don't mix it all up at the same time. Just kind of experiment with one variable there.
Yep. I always also encourage people that you have to be willing to do a little bit of failing when you're first starting to learn anything, because we all were failing at it when we were first starting too, and messing up and doing those stupid mistakes that you're like, oh, I should know that, or I should have done that differently, or oh, I totally forgot to.
You can't be an expert without failing lots of times.
That's right.
Yes.
I still have
Only-
not mastered pants yet. I'm trying, but I have not gotten there.
Yeah.
Also,
And things change.
you really don't need expensive equipment. I think a lot of people are under the misconception that I need a better machine, I need a serger, I need this, I need that, I need that. Really, you don't. I had a photography teacher once who said, the best photographer could get an award-winning photo with a disposable camera, but a crappy photographer couldn't take an award-winning photo with the best equipment. And I feel that the same thing is for sewing. It's, there's so many things to spend money on. Get good fabric.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be expensive, but don't go for poor quality fabric. That's going to make everything so much harder. Good recovery is really important. And that's where you should put your money and spend your time sewing, not, thinking I need a better machine.
Yeah.
I just actually bought and I have a very expensive top of the line machine, right? Because it is my business, but I just bought one for a travel machine, and it is great. And it is not, yeah, it was a couple $100, and I'm amazed at how I'm thinking, wow, this really is. So it's really improved, and I agree completely with Ronnie. You do not need the fancy bells and whistles are fine, and they're fun at some point, but you really can learn and do amazing things with just the basics.
I
Yeah.
overspent on my machine, and it's one of my biggest regrets.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I know Lisa brought up when we were talking originally, that you can also buy used stuff, and you can get great deals on the used. She was talking about the used pleater but used sewing machines. I have many, many used sewing machines that you like. If you want to outgrow it, you can then also sell it to try to help upgrade your own stuff.
Right.
It's not used, it's pre-loved.
Yeah.
Christina, I'm sorry, I have another meeting to go to, so I'm going to have to excuse myself.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
It's nice to
Thanks for
meet
having me.
You.
Yes, thank
Bye
you so
now.
much for joining us.
Thanks.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Awesome. And I see, do you have your ruffle on your dress back there, V?
I've got one of the layers on there. I was hoping I'd get it finished, but do you want to see it? Shall I get it closer?
Yeah, sure. It's been a slow process. You've been working on it every day that you were here.
That's
Ooh.
the lowest. There's 2 layers of skirt.
Goodness, I love this so much.
So it hasn't been attached yet. I've just hemmed the bottom with just a really narrow hem. So that's what this one's going to be hemmed as well, and that will sit underneath.
Yeah. What's your favorite way to do one of those really narrow, tiny hems?
So, I've seen your technique of using band roll, but it's not so easily available here. So, and I don't like using the roll 10 foot. I haven't had good results from that. So what I do is I stitch a line of, well, I've used the overlocking on this one, but imagine if that's just, you can just use a sewing machine, stitch a line, then press it, and then press it again, and then stitch very close to that. So just use the edge foot. That gives me a really nice narrow hem finish.
Yeah, I find everybody has a little bit different way of doing their tiny, tiny hems.
Yeah, but I'd love to try the band roll stuff, but our shops around here don't sell it. So yeah, it may be an Amazon purchase, but
Amazon or YWAC. Does YWAC ship over to you guys?
I've never heard of YWAC.
Oh, it's a sewing supply store here in America. I think they're based here in America.
Yeah, they're in New Jersey, I think.
Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but they have a crazy list of amazing sewing stuff. I
How do
don't
you
think they have a minimum order purchase either, though. It's just once you spend a X amount, maybe $150, you get free shipping. But whether that's true overseas or not, I don't know.
how are you
Probably.
spelling YWAC?
What'd you say? Sorry.
How are you spelling YWAC?
W-A, oh my goodness, I have to type it. It always throws it. W-A-K-Y.
W-A-W-A-K.
W-A-W-A-K. Yeah. It's two. And that always throws me the W-A-W-A. But yeah.
Cool.
And Julie has been able to jump on. Hello, Julie. Welcome.
Hi there. I totally spaced out and forgot to. I'm sorry.
That's
Oh my
okay.
gosh, such beautiful things in people's backgrounds.
You
Those dresses
made
are
it.
gorgeous.
Do
Yes,
you
the
want to
dress.
oh, sorry.
Oh, those dresses are gorgeous in the background there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to do a quick introduction and just say who you are and what you do for everybody?
Sure. My name is Julie Griffey, and I have a website called Machine Embroidery Geek. So I teach people how to use their embroidery machine and use software and just provide information, projects, designs. I have some courses that are available, and I'm working on a couple little gadgets to make embroiderers' lives easier. So that's what I do.
Love it. Yes. And you have multiple types of embroidery machines, right?
Yeah, so I started with one Bernina single needle, and then I needed a backup machine because yeah, I mostly used it just for personal stuff and to test stitch the designs that I was creating. So I bought a small brother machine, and then when after I was teaching it, EEM, which is a everything embroidery market. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's a trade show and courses and whatnot. I was teaching there, and they loaned me a multi-needle. And up until then, I had thought, well, multi-needles are for people that are, doing a lot of embroidery for people. But then once I used it, I was like, oh, this is nonsense. I need a multi-needle. And so I bought a 6 needle, and it's been great. It's a game changer if you're doing a lot of embroidery. And I just got my hands on something called Durkee hoops, which I may be going down a rabbit hole here. So I apologize. But if you embroider things that have very small openings, like even some pillow shams that have just one zipper, it's kind of hard to just holding back all of the excess fabric. But there's some special hoops, add-on hoops you can buy. And I really, really wanted some because I've been doing a lot of tote bags and things that are kind of hard to get into. And so Durkee makes these that are specifically for that kind of allow, you don't have to push back all the excess fabric. You can just kind of let it hang. So they just sent me a set that I'm supposed to make some video content and promote them, which I can very authentically promote it because I think they're going to be a huge game changer. So I'm really excited about that.
It's always exciting to get new toys.
Yeah, well, some of it, I mean, I know this is a first world problem, but sometimes these companies send you things when you start getting into the business of creating content and putting yourself out there. Companies send you things to review. And a lot of times I'm just like not interested. I don't quilt. I don't want quilting stuff. I don't, there's a lot of things that I'm just never going to use. And so it just ends up sitting in the box, and it's kind of a shame, but I just wish they would ask me first, See,
Yeah.
first world problem.
Can I ask you a question, Julia?
Sure.
In your tutorial, your session, you said, I know this motif will fit in the frame. How do you know? How do you make sure that
Yeah. So That's a good question. That particular machine I was using is a very basic level Brother embroidery machine. And its maximum hoop area, it's kind of a statistic that comes with when you buy a machine. You know, when you purchase an embroidery machine, you're very well aware of the fact of what your maximum hoop size is going to be. So for that machine, the maximum hoop size is 4 inches by 4 inches, or about 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. It's actually, it will refuse to take a design that is more than 3.92 inches actually by 3.92 inches. So you know the dimensions of the machine, and then when you buy or download a design, that information about its size comes with it. So when I create embroidery designs to sell, I will export it in a variety of sizes. And I create a text file that explains what all of the different sizes are. So that's how I know.
So when you're designing an embroidery then, how do you determine like how thick the thread's going to be stitched on, or is it?
Yeah, there are density settings when you create objects and you apply a fill to it. So for the most part, you know, there's kind of the default fill is usually pretty acceptable. There's not many occasions where I might mess with that unless you're doing something really specialized. But if you want to get a solid coverage, you know, just for a standard embroidery design, you would kind of, as a digitizer, you would probably accept whatever default fill that the program is suggesting.
It's very clever that it knows how to do that.
I know. Well, it's a lot of people think like a very common question is, well, how do I convert my picture to an embroidery design? And it's not really a conversion. It's just a completely different medium. Because if you think about a photograph, there are millions of colors in a photograph. That's never going to translate very well to an embroidery design because we don't have a million threads. You know, a photograph is made up of pixels. An embroidery design is made up of stitching. So the first step is in converting, which is you don't really convert it, but you're going to need to make some strategic choices about how you're going to take those millions of colors and translate them down to a limited number of colors that your machine could actually stitch out. Most people don't want to stitch out designs that have more than 6 or 7 colors because it's a pain. It takes forever. You're constantly changing. So a good digitizer thinks about that, you know.
What's an average amount of colors? Is it 6?
That's a good question. I think it just depends. I think it depends on the digitizer. If you go to like Embroidery Legacy, there's a guy that I don't know if you're familiar with this company, but there's a guy that runs that company. His name is John Deere, spelt different than the tractors, not the tractor guy. And this family has had an embroidery company for years and years, and they have a collection of thousands of designs. Their style of design is they do a lot of very realistic looking stuff. And so you tend to get 16, 17 colors in some of their designs. I tend to like more bold, abstract, that's just more my aesthetic. And so, you know, I was just digitizing some designs for my June collection, which I'm like scarily behind that needs to be released tomorrow. And, you know, a lot of them were 2, 3, 4 colors. They weren't, you know, but I think I like the aesthetic. I think it's, you know, simple, elegant, and it's quick to stitch out. So it just really depends on, you know, this month I did a bunch of circus designs, and those were, you know, 6, 7 colors each. But I tried to be mindful about repeating colors because I think when you repeat colors in a design, not only is it less color thread changing, but it also makes it more cohesive visually. You know, anytime we repeat something, it kind of unifies and ties things together. So there's just some aesthetic decisions and also some efficiency of stitching decisions that you want to think about when you're making designs. I'll shut up in just a second. I went to this place called Stitch It International, which is it is the worldwide, it is the US based headquarters of sorry, I'm saying this wrong. They are the only USA distributor of a type of embroidery machine called SWF machines. And SWF machines are multi-needle machines. Don't ask me how I got there. It's like in the middle of nowhere, Missouri. But they have just rooms of these massive embroidery machines, and they have a whole wall full of designs that they've stitched out. But when they reclaim these machines, some of these machines have designs built into them. So they pull them off the machines and then they stitch them out. So I was mesmerized by this wall. And they had this one design that was like this crazy bird with all of these colors. And I was like, oh, I want that design. I want to stitch that out, just like this big crazy bird to put on like a shirt or something or a skirt. And they said, well, that's actually a such and such design. I can't think of what they called it, but it was designed to be stitched on this machine that the machine only has one needle and it's only fed with white thread, but the thread is dyed as the stitching goes on. And the file has the instructions for the dye amount, what to achieve those colors. So you get a look that gets closer to photographic because the thread color is constantly changing on the fly.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, I had no idea such a machine exists. And they said, well, we can send you the file and then you can, take the objects and select them and change their thread colors and assign thread colors so it'll be suitable to stitch out on your machine, on your little weenie 6 needle. But that's how I just didn't even know such a thing existed. I thought it was so cool.
What would happen if the thread broke for that though? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thread breaking usually isn't a problem. I mean, that happens all the time when you're embroidering. And
but when it's being dyed, like,
yeah,
you'd have to figure out where in the program.
exactly. It would have to have very precise, you know,
Yeah.
tolerances to know exactly where to resume and not get too much thread. I don't know. That's a good question.
Just a little random, but
Yes.
But what happens when a thread breaks in a one needle design, like the machine that
Yeah.
you were doing on?
Yeah, it's usually not too big of a deal. It usually all the machines have a control in it to go back like 10 stitches or to go back. The machine detects when it's not feeding the thread through. Almost, any machine will tell you, even the most basic $300 brother machines will say, yeah, you've got a thread problem. Usually what I do is, well, sometimes there's reasons why it's breaking. Maybe I put the bobbin in wrong. Maybe there's too much, I don't know, there's a lot of reasons why your thread might be breaking, but then I usually will just say, well, just go back 10 stitches and start from there. So then I notice that I cover up any kind of weirdness, like I'm not going to see a gap in the stitching.
awesome.
Oh,
So
really?
sounds like you're new to machine embroidery.
I've never done machine embroidery,
Yeah.
just done regular machine. But yeah, I've got embroidery stitches on my machine, but they're very, very basic compared
Yeah.
to you were showing.
Yeah. And I mean, the machine that I was demonstrating on, I bought used for $300. So it doesn't, you can start with a very basic machine and really, I could probably sell it for $300. It's some people say, oh, buy whatever you can afford. But I kind of am like, well, or you could just start small and, upgrade when you want to. You can still do a lot in a 4-inch by 4-inch field.
We actually talked about that probably a little bit right before you got on, of buying used machines and then selling them to upgrade.
Yeah. I'm a big fan. My multi-needle I bought from a woman who passed away. Her family was selling it. And I got a great deal on it because they didn't want, I mean, I think a fair price. I didn't rip them off or anything. And I named it after her.
You name your machines.
I thought
So
everybody
do
did that. Yeah. Yeah.
So I name my machines too. Does do you not?
No.
Ronnie does?
Yeah, of course. I spend so much time with them. I rely on them,
Yep. Do you base your machine's name kind of like on the brand, on what you like to sew on it, or is it just kind of random?
Oh, me personally? Oh,
Anybody, Ronnie, whoever names their machines.
My first machine was Isaac. It was a Singer sewing machine after the author Isaac Bashevis Singer. Um, my overlock is Bernadette because it's a Bernina.
Yep.
And I've got Bert, which is my sewing machine. It's also a Bernina. I was unoriginal with names.
Yeah. I also go off of kind of the brand name, and it stays close to the brand name, and or same first letter or something.
What are
So what are
yours?
your names?
Yeah.
Well, my baby lock I just call Baby because I love her so much. She's my serger. And then I have a Kenmore that I call Kenny. I have a Bernina that I call Bernie. And then I have a industrial singer that's a blue, and I call her Big Blue. But I love her. She's currently, her timing's off right now, and I need to get it fixed. And I've needed to get it fixed for like 2 years. Poor Big Blue. She's very sad right now. She's very angry at me.
What have you done on your industrial machine? What kind of things do you do there with that?
Oh, everything.
Mhm.
At my day job, I work on industrials only. So I do everything on there. I've done super lightweight silks to all the way to like heavy denim or lightweight leathers type stuff. So
Mhm.
it's a very I love it because it is a very versatile machine of what it can do. So
I have a Kanso 225, like real old leather sewing machine, and I haven't done that much with it, but I attended some classes at the Chicago School of Shoemaking. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's an amazing place to go and take a class if you're ever in the Chicago area. It's the woman that runs the school has made over 10,000 pairs of shoes.
Woo.
Yeah, and so she is just a treasure trove of information, and the space is beautiful, and but they teach all sorts of leather working skills there, and they teach absolute beginners, and you don't realize how much like control and that it is just having sewn and making things. You don't realize, oh, at least I forget, but like not everybody can do that. Like just to watch some of the beginners in your class like try to cut something, like they can't cut straight, or they don't have the finesse on a machine. They just can't, like they can't control it, and so it can be a little frustrating taking a very basic, it's a new skill, but it can be sometimes a little frustrating with absolute beginners because we have a skill set that's a little bit elevated, coming into these classes, but still there's a lot of new skills that are associated with leather working that are not, if you're a sewer that you don't know about.
Yeah. Leatherworking is high on my list to really dive into more. I've only done like super basic stuff with it, and it's one of those that I would love to do more of.
Mm-hmm.
So
you should treat yourself to a trip to Chicago.
I should.
There's actually a supplier in the Kansas City area of leather and shoe stuff. It's I think it's kind of near Independence, perhaps. And
Okay.
it's a scary place. I mean, it's a mess and very old school, but an
Yeah.
interesting place to go look for leather and things like that.
I think I might have been in there because it's very you have to dig for stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've gone there with a friend before who was doing something with leather. So yeah. But we are at we're just past 1 o'clock. Does anyone have any last minute questions, last minute comments they want to make?
I'm gonna think up some names for my machines.
Yes. I love it. Anyone else? Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for taking this time and joining us. And popping on to hang out and chit chat about a whole bunch of different stuff. I hope you all have had a wonderful week. And don't forget, we are having a 48-hour replay of everybody's videos this coming weekend. So if you missed one of your videos, or you had too much to do that day or something, you missed something, you have time to go back and rewatch those videos, as well as get some of those freebies. So make sure that you take a look for the email that will be coming out tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. so you can also watch the replay. I hope you have a wonderful Friday, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, that's not the right button. Very much not the right button. I'm sharing my screen, and I have no idea which screen I'm sharing.
Still says it's recording.
Yep, and we're still live streaming. I can end that one, but it's not letting me change the keeps wanting to go back to that.
I'm gonna jump off. Goodbye, everyone. It's nice to
I'm just
talk
gonna
to you.
end the meeting.